You know how a tiny lie cracks your whole world open. My phone buzzed with a text about dinner at his mother's house just as I lifted my wine glass. I looked up and froze. He was sitting 3 tables away. It was not the kiss that stopped my breathing, but the wax-sealed envelope sliding across the table toward the woman in red. He was not just cheating on me. He was selling me out. My name is Alina Lee, and if there is one thing life in the hollers of Appalachia taught me before I clawed my way into a corner office in the city, it is that you never let a predator know you are bleeding. You stand still, you quiet your breathing, and you wait for the shot. I am 35 years old, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Northline Strategies. My job is to see the cracks in a corporate structure before the building collapses. I fix things. I manage crises. I organize chaos into profitable spreadsheets. But sitting there in the velvet-lined booth of the Hawthorne room, staring at the empty seat across from me, I did not realize I was the one about to collapse. I had arrived at 7:00 sharp. The client, a nervous representative from a tech firm looking to lobby the city council, had canned at 7:05. It was unprofessional, but in my line of work, people often got cold feet. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. It had been a brutal week. I had spent the last 5 days finalizing a $10 million bid with the city partners, a deal that required me to audit 3 years of financial records and sleep an average of 4 hours a night. I was exhausted down to my marrow. I decided to stay. I ordered a glass of Cabernet, the kind that cost $25 a glass, and allowed myself to sink into the leather banquet. The restaurant was dim, smelling of truffle oil and expensive perfume, the air filled with the low hum of deals being made and affairs being hidden. I took a sip of the wine, letting the dark fruit settle on my tongue, and closed my eyes for a second, just 1 second of peace. My phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. The screen lit up with a message from Ethan, my husband, the man I had shared my bed, my bank accounts, and my secrets with for 7 years. Stuck at Mom's for dinner. The text read, "She made that meatloaf you like. Sorry I'm running late. Miss you. Love you." A soft smile touched my lips. Ethan's mother was a sweet, overbearing woman who lived 40 minutes south of the city. Her meatloaf was terrible, dry, and oversalted, but I always ate it to be polite, and Ethan knew that. It was an inside joke, a touch of intimacy in a digital message. I picked up the phone to type a reply. Something witty about saving me a piece of the burnt crust. That was when I looked up. The Hawthorne room is designed with tiered seating, offering privacy while maintaining a view of the floor. My eyes drifted past the rim of my wine glass. Scanning the room out of habit, I counted 1, 2, 3 tables forward. The smile died on my lips. It did not fade. It vanished, severed instantly by the image before me. Ethan was there. He was not 40 minutes south at his mother's house. He was 30 ft away. He was wearing the navy blazer I had ironed for him that very morning. I remembered smoothing the lapel, picking a stray lit thread off the shoulder, and kissing his cheek before he left for what he said was a site visit. He looked handsome, he looked relaxed, and he was holding hands with a woman in a red dress. I knew her, not personally, but I knew the type. She was striking, with dark hair cascading over her shoulders and a posture that screamed entitlement. Marissa Vale. I recognized her vaguely from industry mixers, a consultant of some sort, the kind who floats between firms without a clear portfolio. My heart slammed against my ribs, a singular violent thud. The noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away, leaving me in a vacuum where the only thing that existed was table 14. If it had just been a dinner, maybe I could have rationalized it. Maybe it was a surprise meeting he hadn't wanted to worry me about. Maybe I was hallucinating from sleep deprivation. Then Ethan leaned in. It was not a lean of business. It was a lean of familiarity. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her jawline. The intimacy of the gesture was a physical blow. It hit me harder than a slap. But it was what happened next that turned my shock into ice. Ethan reached into his briefcase, the leather one I had bought him for his promotion 3 years ago, and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was heavy. I could tell by the way it hit the table. It was not a greeting card. It was not a gift certificate. On the back, sealing the flap, was a circle of red wax, a wax seal. It looked archaic, ceremonial, and utterly out of place for a casual affair. He slid the envelope across the white tablecloth toward Marissa. She did not look surprised. She looked hungry. She placed her hand over the envelope, her manicured nails tapping against the paper, and then she looked up at him and smiled. It was a conspiratorial smile, a smile that said, "We won." They looked like two people who had just pulled off a heist. I sat there frozen. My husband was lying to me about where he was. He was with another woman, and he was handing her something that looked like a contract sealed like a secret pact. My lungs refused to draw air. The betrayal was a physical thing, a jagged stone lodging itself in my throat. I wanted to march over there. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pick up the $1.25 glass of wine and shatter it against the side of his head. The Appalachian girl in me wanted blood. She wanted to make a scene, that with security dragging us all out. But Eleanor Lee, the COO of Northline Strategies, did not make scenes. Eleanor Lee gathered data. I forced myself to breathe. One breath in, one breath out. I pushed the nozzle down. I unlocked my phone. My hands were trembling, but I locked my elbows against the table to steady them. I opened the camera app. I zoomed in. The lens caught them perfectly. I adjusted the frame. I needed context. I needed proof that could not be argued away in a gaslighting session later that night. I widened the shot to include the distinct Art Deco clock on the far wall, showing the time as 7:52. I included the table number stand. I focused on their faces, Ethan's adoring gaze, Marissa's triumphant grin, and the damning cream envelope resting between their hands. Blick. I took 3 photos, one wide, one close-up on their faces, one close-up on the envelope. Then I opened my messages. I stared at his last text, stuck at Mom's. I attached the photo, the one where he was looking at Marissa like she was the center of his universe. I typed a single line, "Enjoy dinner with Mom." I hit send. I watched him. It took 10 seconds. His phone was sitting on the table face up. It lit up. He glanced down, casual at first, probably expecting me to say, "Okay, honey, drive safe." I saw his body stiffen. It was instantaneous, like an electric shock running through his spine. He snatched the phone up. He stared at the screen. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse in a navy blazer. He looked up. He panicked, his head whipped around, scanning the room, his eyes wide and terrified. I did not hide. I did not duck. I sat perfectly straight. My spine fused with steel. His eyes found me. For a moment, we just looked at each other across the 3 tables of separation. The noise of the restaurant rushed back in the clinking of silverware, the laughter, the jazz music, but it sounded distant, underwater. Ethan's mouth opened, forming my name, but no sound came out. Marissa followed his gaze. Turning around in her chair, she saw me. Her smile faltered, but she did not look scared. She looked annoyed. I picked up my wine glass. I raised it in a silent toast to my husband. Then I set it down, unfinished. I stood up. My legs felt hollow, but they held me. I walked to the waiter's station, handed the maitre my credit card, and said, "Add 20% for the service. I am leaving now." "Is everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, sensing the tension. "Everything is clear," I said. I turned and walked toward the exit. I did not run. I walked with the same measured pace I used when entering a boardroom to fire a negligent manager. My heels clicked against the parquet floor, a rhythmic countdown to the end of my marriage. Eleanor, Eleanor, wait. I heard the scrape of a chair being shoved back. Heavy footsteps pounded behind me. I pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the cool night air. The valet was already moving toward the key stand, but I had parked my car myself in the front lot tonight. Eleanor. Ethan grabbed my elbow just as I reached the driver's side door of my sedan. His grip was tight, desperate. I spun around. He was breathless, his face shiny with sweat. "Baby, please. It's not what it looks like. Let me explain. Please, just stop for a second." I looked down at his hand on my arm. Then I looked up at his eyes. The eyes I had trusted for 7 years. The eyes that had looked at me this morning with false love while he planned a date with another woman. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was not loud. It was barely a whisper, but it was cold enough to freeze the air between us. Ethan flinched as if he had been burned. He dropped his hand. "Eleanor, she's a client. It's a work thing. I lied because I knew you'd be jealous, and I didn't want to fight. That envelope is just a proposal. Please, you have to believe me." "A client," I repeated. "And the text about your mother, was that a proposal, too?" He stammered, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a hook. I panicked. "I just didn't want to ruin your night." "You didn't ruin my night, Ethan," I said, opening my car door. "You ruined your life. Eleanor, where are you going?" "Come home. We can talk about this at home." "I am not going home," I said, "because I don't know who lives there anymore." I slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door. I locked it immediately. He banged on the window, mouthing "please" and "I love you," but the glass muffled his lies. I started the engine, threw the car into reverse, and backed out without looking at him again. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I navigated the city streets, the neon lights blurring into streaks of red and gold. I did not drive to our house in the suburbs. I did not drive to my best friend's apartment. I needed neutral ground. I needed a fortress. I pulled into the underground garage of the Rivergate Hotel. It was a business hotel, impersonal and secure. I parked in a dark corner. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing, listening to the engine cool down. I did not cry. Crying was for later. Crying was for when the damage was assessed. Right now, I was in damage control mode. I checked in at the front desk, room 304. I paid with my personal credit card, the one Ethan did not have access to. Up in the room, the silence was deafening. It smelled of industrial cleaner and starch. I threw my bag on the bed and double-locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I checked the peephole. Then I sat down at the small desk by the window. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room, illuminating my face. I inserted the memory card from my dash cam habit and connected my phone. I transferred the 3 photos I had taken at the restaurant. I created a new folder on my encrypted drive. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. My husband had betrayed me. He had lied about his location. He had met a woman named Marissa Vale. He had handed her a sealed document. This was not a mistake. This was a transaction. I named the file Evidence 1. I hit enter. The file saved. And with that click, the wife died and the investigator was born. The door to room 304 clicked shut, engaging the heavy deadbolt with a sound that felt final. I stood in the center of the room for a moment, listening to the hum of the air conditioning unit. It was the only sound in my world. The silence should have been terrifying, but it was not. It was clarifying. I sat down at the generic wooden desk and opened my laptop again. The file Evidence. One was staring at me from the desktop. I turned off the part of my brain that was a wife. I turned off the part that remembered our wedding vows, the way he laughed at bad movies, and the warmth of his back against my chest at night. That woman was a liability right now. Instead, I activated the chief operating officer. When a project is failing, you do not weep over the lost potential. You audit the books. You find the leak. You stop the bleeding. I started with the photos. I uploaded them to a secure cloud server that Ethan did not know existed, a backup account I used for sensitive company data. Then I copied them to an external hard drive I kept in my laptop bag. Redundancy was the first rule of data preservation. I opened the metadata of the photos. 7:52 p.m. Location, the Hawthorne Room. Next, I opened a spreadsheet. I labeled the columns: date, time, location, stated activity, actual activity, financial impact. I logged the first entry. Date October 12th, time 7:52 Panem. Stated activity dinner with mother. Actual activity dinner with Marissa Vale. Financial impact pending. Then I logged into our joint bank account. Ethan and I had always maintained a joint checking account for household expenses and separate accounts for personal spending. We were both high earners. We trusted each other, or rather I had trusted him. I had been so busy managing the finances of a multi-million-dollar corporation that I had put my domestic audit on autopilot. I downloaded the transaction history for the last 12 months. I exported it to Excel and applied a filter. I started looking for outliers. There they were, small things at first. A charge for $150 at a steakhouse in the city on a Tuesday 3 months ago. I checked my calendar for that date. Ethan had told me he was working late on the Henderson account. I highlighted the row in yellow. A charge for $300 at the Ritz-Carlton in Lake Aon. That was a 2-hour drive away. The date was a Friday in August. I remembered that weekend. He said he was going on a fishing trip with his college friends. I checked the transaction details. The bill included room service for two. I highlighted the row in orange. Then I saw the jewelry store. Gilded Lily Fine Gems $1,200 September 4th. My birthday is in February. I had never received a gift from that store. My stomach twisted. A cold knot of nausea trying to rise, but I swallowed it down with a gulp of tepid bottled water. Focus Illiner. Just the numbers. Then I found the pattern that made my blood run cold. It was a recurring transfer. On the 15th of every month for the past 10 months, a sum of $2,500 was transferred electronically. The recipient was listed simply as Bach LC. I copied the string of text and pasted it into the State Business Registry search engine. Vale Orchard Consulting. Vale, Marissa Vale. I sat back in the stiff hotel chair, the screen blurring slightly. It was not just an affair. He was funding her. $2,500 a month was $25,000 over 10 months. That was a down payment on a car. That was rent. That was my money. Our money flowing directly into the pocket of the woman in the red dress. But why an LLC? Why not just Venmo? Why make it look like a business transaction? I opened a new tab for our insurance portal. If he was moving money, he might be moving other things. I navigated to the profile section. Everything looked normal until I checked the correspondence history. 3 months ago, a request had been submitted to change the mailing address for sensitive documents. Not to our home address, not to his office. It was changed to a P.O. box at a pack mail center in a strip mall on the west side of town. I stared at the address, Box 419. He was diverting mail. That meant there were credit cards I did not know about, notices I was not supposed to see. He had built a firewall between his life and mine, brick by brick, document by document. While I was busy ironing his shirts, I did not sleep that night. I spent the hours cross-referencing toll road charges with his business trips. I built a timeline that was irrefutable. By the time the sun began to bleed gray light through the heavy hotel curtains, I had a dossier. At 7:00 in the morning, I called my assistant. "I have a personal emergency," I said. My voice was steady, professional. "I will be offline for 48 hours. Cancel the strategy meeting. Tell the team to proceed with the audit based on my last notes." I did not offer details. In the corporate world, personal emergency usually meant a death or a divorce. I suppose this was a bit of both. I showered in the hotel bathroom, scrubbing my skin until it was red, as if I could wash away the feeling of being a fool. I had no clean clothes. I put the same suit back on, the fabric feeling heavy and contaminated. I left the hotel and drove to a nearby Target. I bought the essentials as if I were a refugee fleeing a war zone. 5 pairs of cotton underwear, a pack of white t-shirts, yoga pants, a toothbrush, deodorant, a cheap burner phone. I paid cash. I did not want Ethan tracking my location through credit card alerts. I returned to the hotel, changed into the cheap clothes, and sat on the edge of the bed. I felt lighter, stripped down. I was in evacuation mode. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Taylor Brooks. Taylor had been my roommate in college and was now a ferocious marketing executive who treated life like a contact sport. "Meet me tonight, Rivergate Hotel, room 304. Do not ask questions over the phone." Taylor arrived at 6:00. She did not knock. She pounded. When I opened the door, she took one look at me, the cheap t-shirt, the dark circles under my eyes, the laptop surrounded by notepads, and she stepped inside, locking the door behind her. She placed a bottle of vodka on the desk. "Talk," she said. I talked. I walked her through the dinner, the text, the woman, the envelope, the transfers to Vale Orchard Consulting, the hidden P. box. Taylor did not gasp. She did not hug me. She listened with the intensity of a predator watching prey. When I finished, she poured 2 glasses of vodka, neat in the hotel tumblers. "He is not just cheating," Taylor said, her voice low. "He is building an exit strategy. The money transfers to an LLC. That is asset diversion. He is funneling marital funds out before he files so he can claim he is broke." "I know," I said. He looked happy. Taylor. When he handed her that envelope, he looked like they had just pulled off a bank heist. Taylor swirled her glass. She looked me dead in the eye. "Eleanor, listen to me carefully. Most women in your position want an apology. They want to know why she's better. They want closure." She leaned forward. "Do you want justice or do you want peace?" I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. I looked at the sum of $25,000. I thought about the lie about his mother's meatloaf. "I want the truth," I said. "I want to know exactly what was in that envelope. And then once I have the facts, I will decide how much it is going to cost him." Taylor nodded. "Good. Then you need a shark, not a mediator. You need Diane Carver." The name was legendary in the city. Diane Carver was a divorce attorney who cost $600 an hour and was rumored to be able to find a hidden nickel in a haystack. They said she read financial statements like poetry and could smell a hidden asset from 3 counties away. "I will call her." I said, "Do it now." Taylor said, "Leave a message. Tell her you have a complex financial fraud case wrapped inside a divorce. That will get her attention." After Taylor left, promising to check on my house without letting Ethan see her, I sat in the dim light. I felt a strange calm. I had a plan. I had a team. My phone buzzed. It was Ethan. I stared at the screen, my heart rate spiking for a fraction of a second before I forced it down. "Hope you are okay." The text read, "I am worried about you. I am taking Mom to her heart specialist tomorrow morning, so I will be out of pocket until noon. Please call me when you can." I read the text twice. "Taking Mom to her heart specialist tomorrow." I turned to my laptop. I'd opened my personal calendar. I managed the family schedule because Ethan was incapable of remembering birthdays or anniversaries. I scrolled to the current week. Ethan's mother, Barbara, was a snowbird. She spent October through March in a condo in Sarasota, Florida. I had booked her flight myself 3 weeks ago. I had the confirmation number in my email. She was not here. She was 1,000 m away. Ethan was not taking his mother to the doctor. He was using his mother, a woman who loved me, a woman I had cared for when she was sick, as an alibi for something else. And he was sloppy. He was so arrogant, so sure of his control over me that he did not even bother to check if his lie was physically possible. He assumed I was too emotional, too broken to check the flight logs. He was wrong. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of his text. I took a screenshot of his mother's flight confirmation. I saved them both into the folder. Evidence too. I closed the laptop. I was not just a wife scorned anymore. I was a witness building a case. And tomorrow I was going to see Diane Carver to find out how to bury him with it. Diane Carver's office did not look like a place where marriages went to die. It looked like a place where corporations were dismantled. Located on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in the financial district, it smelled of espresso and intimidatingly expensive leather. There were no boxes of tissues on the desk. There were no inspirational quotes about healing or new beginnings. There was only a massive slab of polished marble and a woman who looked like she could cut a diamond with her gaze. Diane was in her 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. She did not offer me coffee. She held out her hand for the file. I handed over the folder. Inside were the printouts of the photos, the spreadsheet of the transactions, the text messages, and the screenshot of Ethan's mother's flight confirmation. Diane put on a pair of thick-rimmed glasses. She flipped through the pages in silence. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the hard drive in her computer. She spent a long time looking at the photo of the wax-sealed envelope. She spent even longer looking at the transaction history, For Vale, Orchard Consultant. Finally, she closed the folder and took off her glasses. She looked at me. "Do you still love him?" she asked. The question surprised me. I opened my mouth to answer, to explain the complexity of 7 years of history, but she held up a hand. "Actually, strike that," she said sharply. "I do not care. That is a question for a therapist. I charge $600 an hour. Eleanor, you are not paying me to manage your heart. You are paying me to secure your future. So, let us talk about the only thing that matters in this room. Leverage." I sat up straighter. "I want to know what is going on." "You already know what is going on," Diane said, tapping the folder. "Your husband is having an affair, but he is not just sleeping with her. He is investing in her. This LLC, Vale Orchard Consulting, is less than a year old. The payments are regular. He is treating this woman like a business expense." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Now, the real questions. Do you have children?" "No," I said. "The custody battles are messy and expensive. Whose name is on the house?" "Both of ours," I replied. "We bought it 5 years ago." "Retirement accounts?" "He has a 401k. I have a diversified portfolio and company stock options." "Debts?" "Just the mortgage. We pay off our credit cards every month." Diane made a note on a legal pad that you know of. She corrected. "If he is diverting mail to a P.O. box, he could have opened lines of credit in your name or joint name without you seeing the statements. We see it all the time. The husband buys the girlfriend a condo, and the wife ends up paying the interest." My stomach turned over, but I kept my face impassive. "What is the plan?" Diane stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. 3 prongs. First, we separate the finances legally. I will file a motion to freeze assets to prevent dissipation. That means he cannot move another dime to Miss Vale without a judge asking why. Second, we build the case for adultery and financial misconduct. In this state, fault still matters for alimony and asset division. If we prove he spent marital funds on an affair, we can claw that money back from his share of the estate. She turned back to me. Third, and this is the most critical, we check for identity theft. You need to lock down your credit reports today, right now. He wouldn't go that far, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He lied about his mother having a heart condition, Diane said coldly. A man who uses his mother's health as a cover story has no bottom. Do not underestimate him, and do not underestimate what he will do when he realizes he is cornered. She sat back down. He is going to flip the script. Eleanor, when you serve him papers, he will not apologize. He will attack. He will tell everyone that you are the problem. He will say you are cold, work-obsessed, neglectful. He might even try to paint you as mentally unstable to justify his actions. He will try to get ahead of the story at your workplace. "My workplace?" I frowned. "He doesn't work at Northline. Reputation travels," Diane said. "Just be ready." She pushed a retainer agreement across the desk. It was $5,000 just to start. I signed it without hesitating. "I need more than just the bank statements," I said, handing the pen back. "I need to know what was in that envelope." It had a wax seal. "Diane, it looked official." Diane nodded. She pressed a button on her intercom. "Send Ronan in." The door opened and a man walked in. Ronan Shar did not look like a private investigator from a noir movie. He looked like an overworked auditor. He was wearing a rumpled button-down shirt and carrying a tablet. He had the tired eyes of someone who had seen every variety of human deceit and found them all boring. "Eleanor, this is Ronan," Diane said. "He specializes in corporate fraud and forensic accounting. He traces money that does not want to be found." Ronan sat down next to me. He did not shake hands. He looked at the photo of the envelope on Diane's desk. "Wax seal," he muttered. Theatrical usually means a personal contract or a deed or a love letter from someone who thinks they are living in a 19th century novel. But given the money transfers, I would bet on a contract. He looked at me. "I can pull the filings for the LOC. I can run a background check on Marissa Vale. I can put a tracker on his car if you authorize it. I can find out who she is, where she lives, and how long this has been going on." He paused, studying my face. "But I need to know your tolerance." Some clients just want a summary. They want to know yes or no so they can sign the divorce papers. Other clients want every detail. They want to know what they ate, where they slept, and what color the sheets were. I don't care about the sheets, I said. I want to know the business. I want to know why he's paying her. I want to know what they are planning. If he is moving money, he is planning the future. I want to know what that future looks like. Rana nodded. You want the ammunition? I want everything, I said, but it has to be usable, admissible in court. No illegal wiretaps, no breaking and entering. I need a clean kill. Clean kills are my specialty, Ronan said. He tapped his tablet. I will start with the LLC, Vale Orchard Consulting. It sounds like a shell company. I will have a preliminary report for you in 24 hours. I stood up to leave. My legs felt steadier than they had the night before. I had a lawyer. I had an investigator. I was not just a victim and more. I was a plaintiff. Elena, Diane called out as I reached the door. One more thing. Do not sleep with him. Do not let him move back into the bedroom. If you resume marital relations after discovering the affair, it can be argued that you condoned it. It weakens your case. Trust me, I said, my hand on the doorknob. That will not be a problem. I walked out of the building and into the bustling street. The city was alive with the lunchtime rush. People were shouting into phones, eating sandwiches on benches, living their normal, honest lives. I felt detached from them, like I was moving through a different dimension. I checked my watch. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. I had told my assistant I would be offline, but habit forced me to check my work email. I pulled my phone out of my purse. There was a notification from the Northline Strategies internal server. It was marked high importance. Subject: Urgent City Partnership Strategy Meeting External Consultant. Introduction. I frowned. The city project was my deal. I had closed it. Why was there a strategy meeting without me? I opened the email. Team, due to the accelerated timeline of the Urban Development Initiative, the City Council has requested we bring in an independent compliance auditor to oversee the finalization of the contract. Please welcome our external partner, who will be leading the transition phase. Meeting time tomorrow, 9:00 a.m. Lead consultant, Marissa Vale, Vale Orchard Consulting. I stopped walking. People bumped into me, grumbling as they navigated around my frozen figure on the sidewalk, but I did not feel them. I stared at the screen until the pixels seemed to burn into my retinas. Marissa Vale, the woman in the red dress, the woman taking my husband's money. She was not just a mistress. She was not just a random consultant he had met at a bar. She was coming into Northline. She was coming into my company. She was taking over my project. The air left my lungs. The pieces slammed together in my mind with the force of a train wreck. The envelope, the waxed seal, the deal. They were celebrating. It was not just about their relationship. It was about this. Ethan knew the city project was my career-defining achievement. He knew every detail of it because I had told him. I had vented to him about the difficult council members. I had told him about the compliance hurdles. He had fed that information to her. He had coached her. He had funded her LLC so she would look legitimate enough to bid on the consultant contract. And now she was walking through the front door of my office to supervise my work. This was not a love affair. This was a hostile takeover. My hand shook as I held the phone. I felt a surge of nausea followed immediately by a cold white hot rage. He was not just breaking my heart. He was trying to dismantle my life. He wanted to take my money, my marriage, and my career and hand it all to her. I opened my messaging app. I found the thread with Diane Carver. I typed a single message, my fingers flying across the glass screen. We are not just divorcing him. We have to protect my career. She is in my building. I hit send. I pocketed the phone and looked up at the skyline. The sun was shining, but the world looked darker than it ever had before. I walked toward the parking garage, my heels striking the pavement like gunshots. The time for sadness was over. Now it was time for war. Walking back into the glass-walled lobby of Northline Strategies felt like stepping into a pressurized airlock. The world outside was messy, chaotic, and filled with the debris of my marriage, but inside the air was filtered, cool, and smelled of ambition. I swiped my badge at the turnstile. The little green light beeped a sound of permission, of belonging. You belong here, I told myself. This is your kingdom. He is just a tourist. I took the elevator to the 30th floor. My face was a mask of perfectly applied foundation and neutral professionalism. I nodded to the junior analysts huddled by the coffee machine. They were talking about quarterly KPIs and a looming deadline for a logistics merger. Their stress was quaint. They were worried about spreadsheets. I was worried about an espionage campaign being run from my own bedroom. Elena, my assistant Sarah, greeted me, standing up as I approached. You have the city partners meeting in 10 minutes, conference room B, and you look intense today. It is a big day, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. Do we have the updated files uploaded and ready on the server? She said. I walked into my office, placed my bag down and checked my phone. No messages from Diane. No messages from Ronan. Just the silence of the hunt. I took a breath, smoothed my skirt, and headed to conference room B. The room was already full. The city partners, 3 men in gray suits representing the municipal council, were seated on the left. On the right sat the Northline team, and at the head of the table, standing next to the projector screen, was a woman in a sharp cream blazer and a pencil skirt. My step faltered for a fraction of a second, invisible to anyone who did not know me. It was Marissa Vale up close without the dim lighting of the Hawthorne room. She was even more striking. She had the kind of polished, aggressive beauty that worked well in boardrooms. She was arranging her notes with a confidence that made my skin crawl. Elena, the lead councilman, Mr. Anderson said, standing to shake my hand. Good to see you. We were just getting started. I believe you haven't met our new external compliance monitor. He gestured to her. This is Marissa Vale. Anderson said. She is with Vale Orchard Consulting. The city has brought her in to audit the final phase of the project just to ensure total transparency before we sign the $10 million grant. Marissa turned to me. She extended a hand. Her nails were painted a deep burgundy. A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lee, she said. Her voice was smooth, professional, and laced with arsenic. She used my married name. She did it on purpose. Her eyes locked onto mine, and in them I saw zero fear. I saw amusement. She knew exactly who I was. She knew she was standing in my office, auditing my work, paid for by the city, but funded by my husband. I took her hand. It was cool and dry. MS. Vale, I said. I wasn't aware we needed external compliance. Northline's internal protocols are the gold standard. Fresh eyes never hurt, she said, withdrawing her hand. Especially on a project of this magnitude. We just want to make sure there are no conflicts of interest. The audacity was breathtaking. She was the conflict of interest. I took my seat. The meeting began for 2 hours. I had to sit there and listen to the woman sleeping with my husband critique my operational strategy. She was smart. I had to give her that. She asked pointed questions about our vendor selection process and our data security measures. She was looking for cracks. She was looking for something she could use to leverage me out of my own deal. My phone, placed face down on the table, buzzed once. I glanced at it under the lip of the table. Ethan, I know you are angry. I will explain everything tonight. Just come home. I flipped the phone back over. I focused on Marissa. She was pointing at a slide about liability. If there is a data breach, she was saying, the liability falls squarely on the chief operating officer. We need to tighten the language here. She smiled at me. It was a predator's smile. I am coming for your job, Elena, the smile said, and your husband is holding the door open for me. When the meeting ended, I walked straight back to my office and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the cold mahogany of my desk until the tremors stopped. My computer pinged. It was an encrypted email from Ronan, the investigator. Subject update. 110 a.m. Target. Ethan tracked to a co-working space on 4th Street. Rented by the hour. He met with subject B. Marissa briefly before she left for your office. Afterward, Target met with an unidentified male approx 50 years old wearing a cheap suit. Target handed over a leather document bagged. I have photos. Identity of the male is pending, but he looks like a fixer. Will update. I stared at the screen. Ethan was handing off documents. To whom? My desk phone rang. It was Diane Carver. I have the report on the LOC, Diane said without preamble. Vale Orchard Consulting was incorporated exactly 10 months ago. The registered agent is a generic service, but the funding source traces back to a routing number that matches your husband's consulting account. Eleanor. The timeline matches his business trips perfectly. Every time he went out of town, money moved into that account. She is here, Diane, I whispered. Marissa is in my office. She is the city's external auditor. That is the play, Diane said, her voice turning grim. They are not just stealing money. They are setting up a fall guy. If anything goes wrong with this city project, who takes the blame? I do. I said I am the COO. Exactly. And if the external auditor, who happens to be his girlfriend, finds irregularities in your work, they can fire you for cause. You lose your severance. You lose your stock options. And Ethan gets to divorce the disgrace instead of a powerhouse. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I need to check the logs, I said. I have to go. I hung up and opened the internal network administration tool. As I had HIL clearance. I navigated to the access logs for the Urban Development Initiative file server. I scrolled through the history. My access 9 a.m. May Sarah's access 8:30 a.m. Then I saw it. User admin remote time 3:14 a.m. IP address external. Someone had logged in remotely in the middle of the night. They had accessed the confidential financial projections, the sensitive data that if leaked would disqualify us from the city contract. I checked the IP address. It was a VPN bouncing through 3 different countries, but the entry point was local. They were planting something, or they were stealing data to leak it so they could blame me for the breach. I did not call IT support that would create a ticket that Marissa could see. Instead, I called the head of internal security, a man named Marcus, who owed me a favor from when I saved his department from budget cuts 2 years ago. Marcus, I said when he answered, this is off the record. I need you to secure the access logs for the Urban Project server from last night. Do not flag it. Just copy them to a secure drive and bring it to me physically. Trouble? Marcus asked. Potential sabotage, I said. I need to prove that the 3M login wasn't me. Consider it done, he said. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a state of hypervigilance. I worked. I answered emails. I reviewed proposals. But every sense was tuned to the threat. I was fighting a war on 2 fronts. The domestic and the professional, and the enemy lines had merged. At 6:00, I packed my bag. I had the secure drive from Marcus in my purse. I walked down to the parking garage. The garage was concrete and shadowed, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My heels echoed in the emptiness. I reached my car and unlocked it. Eleanor, the voice came from behind a concrete pillar. I spun around, phone already in my hand. Ethan stepped out. He looked terrible. His tie was loosened, his hair messy, and his eyes were red-rimmed. He looked like a man who had not slept, which was ironic, considering I was the one living in a hotel. How did you get in here? I asked. My voice was ice. I still have my spouse badge, he said. You haven't revoked it yet. I will fix that tomorrow, I said. I held up my phone. I am recording this, Ethan. Anything you say will be sent to my lawyer. He took a step forward, his hands out in a pleading gesture. Baby, please put the phone down. You are overreacting. You are blowing this whole thing up, and you don't even understand what is happening. I understand perfectly. I said, I met your business partner today. Marissa is very thorough. Ethan flinched. She is just doing her job. Listen to me, Eleanor. I am doing this for us. I know it looks bad. I know the money looks bad, but I'm trying to secure a future where we don't have to work 80 hours a week. By stealing from me, I asked, by humiliating me. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. It is not stealing. It is leverage. We are going to flip this deal. Once the city signs, Marissa and I take a percentage of the consulting fee and we walk away. We can pay off the mortgage. We can finally take that trip to Italy. I stared at him. He was delusional. He actually believed he could spin this. You are not doing this for us. I said, you are doing this for her. I saw the envelope, Ethan. I saw the way you touched her. That is part of the game, he insisted. I have to keep her happy, to keep the deal moving. She has the connections with the city. Then he said it, the sentence that changed everything. He looked at me with genuine confusion and lowered his voice. Eleanor, don't ruin this deal. If you blow the whistle on Marissa, you blow the whistle on yourself. You signed the initial compliance reports. If she goes down for fraud, you go down for negligence. You benefit from this too, if you just stay quiet. I froze. He thought I was tracked. He thought he had me checkmated. He believed that because I was the COO, I was so entangled in the paperwork that I couldn't expose their scheme without destroying my own career. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was negotiating a hostage situation, and he thought I was the hostage. I looked at him, looked at him, and realized I was looking at a stranger, a weak, greedy stranger who had underestimated my competence. I did not sign anything fraudulent. Ethan, I said softly, and I do not negotiate with terrorists. I opened my car door. Eleanor, he shouted, moving toward me. Get back, I snapped. Or I call security and have you dragged out in front of the cameras. He stopped. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He realized perhaps for the first time that the woman who ironed his shirts was gone. Talk to Diane Carver, I said. She's the only person you are allowed to speak to. I got in the car, locked the doors, and drove away. I watched him in the rear-view mirror, standing alone under the flickering yellow light, a small man in a big empty garage as I merged onto the highway, heading back to the Rivergate Hotel. My mind replayed his words. She has the connections with the city. Marissa Vale was a consultant. She didn't have power on her own. She needed a sponsor. Someone inside the city council or the administration had to be feeding her the contract opportunities. Ethan was the financier, but he wasn't the political muscle. There was a third player. Marissa was betraying someone too. She had a partner or a fiancé or a husband. Someone she was hiding this affair from just as Ethan hid it from me. Someone who gave her the appearance of legitimacy. I needed to find the other victim. If I could find the person Marissa Vale was cheating on, I wouldn't just have a divorce case. I would have an army. I picked up my burner phone and dialed Ronan. I need you to dig deeper on Marissa, I said. Not her business, her personal life. Who is she living with? Who does she go home to when she isn't with my husband? Find him, Ronan. Find him tonight. The email from Ronan arrived at 10:00 at night. It contained a single PDF file, titled Subject B Profile. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, the room illuminated only by the harsh blue light of the laptop screen. I opened the file. There was a photograph of a man. He had kind eyes, messy brown hair, and the sort of face that suggested he apologized when other people bumped into him. Named Grant Hollowell, occupation forensic auditor, private practice, relationship status, cohabitating with Marissa Vale for 3 years, engaged. I stared at the screen. The irony was sharp enough to cut. My husband's mistress was engaged to a forensic auditor. We were both people who made a living finding the truth. Yet, we were the two people sleeping in the dark. I called Diane. She answered on the first ring, her voice clear and alert as if she never slept. I found him, I said. His name is Grant. He is a fiancé, not a husband, and he is an auditor. Perfect, Diane said. If he is an auditor, he will respect evidence. But listen to me closely. Helena, do not go to him as a hysterical wife. Do not scream. Do not cry. You are a professional informing another professional of a liability. How do I tell him? Email, Diane advised. Give him the data. Let him process it in private. If you ambush him in person, he might deny it to save face. Give him the night to stare at the ceiling and realize his life is a lie. Then he will come to you. I hung up. I spent 40 minutes drafting the email. I deleted the first 3 versions. They were too angry, too emotional. Finally, I settled on facts. Subject regarding Marissa Vale and Ethan Pierce. Mr. Hollowell, my name is Eleanor Lee. I believe our partners are involved in a relationship that affects both our lives and our finances. I do not want to cause a scene, but I believe you deserve to know the truth. Attached are two photographs taken at the Hawthorne Room on October 12th at 7:52 in the evening. Please note the time and the context. I have more information regarding financial irregularities involving a company called Vale Orchard Consulting. If you wish to discuss this, please let me know. I attached the photo of Ethan and Marissa holding hands and the photo of the envelope on the table. I did not include the kiss. That was too cruel for first contact. I hit send, then I waited. The silence of the hotel room felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I wondered what Grant was doing. Was he sitting on a couch next to her right now? Was she texting Ethan while Grant watched television at 2:14 in the morning? My phone buzzed. Meet me tomorrow morning, 8:00, Juniper and Ash Cafe on 4th Street. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I arrived at Juniper and Ash at 7:45. It was a trendy spot with exposed brick walls and the smell of overpriced espresso. I chose a table in the back corner, facing the door. I ordered a black coffee and waited. At 8:00 exactly, Grant walked in. I recognized him immediately from the file. Though he looked older than his photo, he was wearing a rumpled gray sweater and jeans. His face was pale, unshaven, and his eyes had the hollow, haunted look of a man who had just watched his world burn down. He scanned the room. Our eyes met. There was a flicker of recognition, a shared understanding of the wreckage we were standing in. He walked over and sat down. He did not say hello. He did not order a coffee. He placed his hands on the table and I saw that they were trembling. She told me she was at a networking dinner. Grant said his voice was rough, like he had been screaming or smoking all night. She said it was for the city contract. She was, I said softly. Just not the way you thought. Grant looked at me. You are the wife. I am the wife, I confirmed. How long he asked. I found out 2 days ago, but looking at the financials, it has been going on for at least 10 months. Grant let out a short, bitter laugh. He ran a hand over his face. 10 months. God, that explains so much. The password changes on her phone, the late nights working on proposals, the way she started buying expensive laundry that I never saw her wear. He looked up at me, his eyes wet but angry. Who is he? Your husband. Ethan Pierce, I said. He works in sales. He thinks he is a mastermind. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder. I slid it across the table. I am not here to talk about their feelings, Grant. I am here to talk about the money because that is what is going to hurt us the most. Grant opened the folder. He looked at the spreadsheet I had compiled, the transfers from our joint account, the dates, the amounts. His finger traced the line for Vale Orchard Consulting. Vale Orchard, he muttered. She told me that was her side hustle. She said she was doing freelance consulting for small businesses. She said the money was coming from clients. The client is my husband, I said. He has transferred $25,000 to that LLC in the last 10 months. Grant stopped at a specific date on the spreadsheet. August 15th, a transfer of $5,000. His face went gray. He looked like he was going to be sick. What is it? I asked. August 15th, Grant whispered. That was the day she put the deposit down on a new apartment. She told me it was an investment property. She said she wanted to buy a studio to rent out to build passive income for our future. She used my savings for the closing costs, but she said she covered the deposit with her bonus. He looked at me, horror dawning on his face. It wasn't a bonus. Your husband paid for the apartment she's going to leave me for. The cruelty of it hung in the air between us. They were not just cheating. They were using us to fund their escape. Ethan was using my money to build a life with Marissa, and Marissa was using Grant's savings to secure the real estate. We were the financiers of our own destruction. Grant closed the folder. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. I am an auditor, he said. I spend my life finding hidden assets for corporations. I track embezzlement, and I missed this. I missed it in my own house. You trusted her, I said. We are not stupid, Grant. We were just in love. There is a difference. He nodded slowly. He looked at me with a new intensity. What do you want? Helena, you didn't come here just to show me this. You want something. I want to stop them, I said. I am filing for divorce, obviously, but it is more than that. Marissa is currently auditing my project at Northline Strategies. She is using her relationship with Ethan to infiltrate my company. I need to prove the fraud before they destroy my career. Grant leaned back. You want to destroy them? I want the truth. I corrected. I want to expose the financial web they have built. I want my money back, and I want them to face the consequences of fraud. Grant looked out the window for a long moment. When he turned back, his expression had hardened. The heartbroken fiancé was receding, and the forensic auditor was stepping forward. I don't want a dirty war, Grant said. I don't want to key his car or post photos on Facebook. That is beneath me. But I want them to fall. I want them to fall so hard they can never climb back up. Agreed. I said we do this by the book. Legal, financial, irrefutable. I can track the money on her end. Grant said, I have access to her home computer. I know her passwords or I can guess them. If money flowed from your husband to her LLC, it had to go somewhere else. Money always leaves a trail. Good, I said. My lawyer is handling the divorce and the asset freeze, but we need to connect Marissa to the corruption at Northline. She didn't get that consulting gig on her own. Ethan doesn't have the authority to hire external auditors for the city. Grant's eyes narrowed. That reminds me, about 3 months ago, we were at a dinner party. Marissa had too much wine. She was bragging about her big break. She said she had a guardian angel. A guardian angel. No, she said she had someone on the inside at Northline who was going to fast-track her. I thought she meant you, or maybe your husband. It wasn't me, I said. And Ethan isn't high enough up the ladder to fast-track a city contract. She described him, Grant said. She said he was an old silver fox who loved sailing. She said they met at a charity gala last year, and he took a liking to her ambition. My blood ran cold. Silver hair sailing. Did she say his name? I asked, my voice tight. No, Grant said. But she said he joked that he was the captain of the ship, and she was his first mate. I felt the room spin. That was exactly how my boss, Marcus Thorne, the senior vice president of operations, described himself. He had a sailboat docked at the marina. He was 60 years old with silver hair and a reputation for mentoring young, attractive women. It wasn't just Ethan. Ethan was the pawn. Ethan was the wallet. But Marcus Thorne, my direct superior, the man I had trusted with my career for 5 years, was the one who opened the gate. My boss, I whispered. She is sleeping with my husband, and she is being protected by my boss. Grant reached across the table. He did not touch my hand, but he tapped the folder firmly. Then we have a bigger problem than a divorce. Grant said, if your boss is involved, they are running a kickback scheme. Ethan funnels money to her LLC. She gets the contract. Your boss approves it. They all get a cut of the city grant. And I am the sigh. I realized I am the one signing the operational checks. If the audit finds fraud, Marcus will claim ignorance. Marissa will claim she was just a consultant, and I will go to prison. I looked at Grant. For the first time in 2 days, I did not feel alone. I felt dangerous. We need a pact, I said. Name it, Grant replied. I handle the legal side. I said, I will file the divorce motions that force Ethan to declare his assets. That will put pressure on them. You use your skills to trace the flow of funds from her LLC. Find out where the money goes after it hits her account. If any of it goes back to Marcus Thorne or to an offshore account, we have them on federal charges. Brad nodded. He took a sip of my black coffee, not even realizing it wasn't his. I am in, he said. I will go home tonight and play the role of the loving fiancé. I will let her think she is safe, and while she is sleeping, I will clone her hard drive. Be careful, I said. If they realize we are working together, they will destroy evidence. They want no, Grant said. He stood up, buttoning his coat. He looked taller than he had when he walked in. They think you are a scorned wife, and I am a clueless boyfriend. They think they are the smartest people in the room. He looked down at me, and a grim smile touched his lips. They forgot that we are the ones who do the math. Go get them, Grat. I said, you too, Elena. He walked out of the cafe and into the morning sun. I watched him go. I felt a strange sense of kinship with this stranger. We were the collateral damage in someone else's love story, but we were about to become the authors of their tragedy. I picked up my phone. I had a meeting with Diane to prepare for, and now I had a new name to add to the kill list. Marcus Thorne. The circle was complete, and I was going to burn it all down. The fluorescent lights of Diane Carver's conference room seemed to hum with a frequency that only dogs and desperate women could hear. On the polished mahogany table lay a single sheet of paper that Diane had slid across to me with the gravity of a coroner pulling back a sheet. This, Diane said, tapping the document with a manicured fingernail, is look down. It was a loan addendum for a line of credit attached to our home equity. The amount was $50,000. The date was 3 weeks ago, and at the bottom, right next to the date, was my signature. I did not sign this, I said. My voice was flat. I did not feel the spike of panic I might have felt 3 days ago. Now I only felt the cold calculation of an auditor. I have not authorized any equity withdrawal. I know you didn't, Diane said, because on that day you were in a deposition for the Northline merger all morning, but the bank has a digital certificate saying you did. It was an electronic signature via a secure portal. Ethan, he had not just cheated. He had committed a felony. He had logged in as me, clicked the box that said, I accept, and typed my name. He had stolen my identity to fund his future with Marissa. He thinks he is clever, I said. He thinks because it is digital. It is invisible. I pulled out my laptop right there in the conference room. I did not ask for permission. I logged into our bank's secure message center. I navigated to the security tab. What are you doing? Diane asked, watching me with approval. I am requesting the access log for the signature event, I said, typing rapidly. Every digital signature captures an IP address and a device ID. It is federal law for banking compliance. I hit enter. The report auto-generated within 30 seconds. I spun the laptop around so Diane could see. Device ID iPad Pro 12.9 in name Ethan's iPad. He signed my name using his own device. I said he did not even bother to use a VPN or a public computer. He was sitting on our couch, probably while I was making dinner or working late, and he stole $50,000 of our equity. Diane smiled. It was a sharp smile. That is not just grounds for divorce, Elena. That is fraud. That is identity theft. We can use this to invalidate the debt assignment, meaning he owes that $50,000 entirely, not you, and we can use it as leverage to force a settlement. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a secure message from Ronan, the investigator. I opened it. There was no text, just a series of high-resolution photographs taken from a long lens. The first photo showed Ethan and Marissa standing in the parking lot of a diner on the outskirts of the city. They looked tense. Marissa was smoking a cigarette, something I had never seen her do. The second photo showed a third person joining them. He was a heavy-set man in a cheap suit carrying a thick briefcase. I showed the phone to Diane. Who is that? Diane adjusted her glasses. She squinted at the man's face. Then she let out a short, sharp laugh. That, she said, is Barry the Eraser Gar. He is a credit broker. He specializes in what they politely call distressed asset management. In reality, he helps people hide debt or move bad loans into shell companies so they do not show up on credit reports during a background check. Why would they need him? I asked. Because they are cleaning house. Diane explained they are trying to wash their financial records before the divorce filing hits. Ethan knows I will subpoena his credit report. He is trying to move that $50,000 debt and probably other debts I don't know about off his personal ledger and into an LLC where he thinks I cannot look. Vale Orchard Consulting, I whispered. Exactly, Diane said. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Grant. I picked up the call immediately. Grant, tell me you found something. I found the river, Grant said. His voice was breathless. The sound of keyboard clacking audible in the background. I cloned her hard drive last night while she was sleeping. Elena, the money trail is huge. How huge? Vale Orchard Consulting is not just receiving money from Ethan. Grant said, I found a second income stream last month. $40,000 came in from a company called Civic Horizons LLC. I don't know that name, I said. Neither did I, Grant replied. So I dug. Civic Horizons is a registered vendor for the city. They provide logistical support. But here is the kicker. Their registered address is the same suite number as the intermediary firm handling the urban development initiative. The blood drained from my face. Wait, I said, my hand gripping the phone tight. Are you telling me the money is coming from the city project? It is a kickback loop, Grant said, his voice dropping to a whisper. The city pays the intermediary. The intermediary pays Civic Horizons. Civic Horizons pays Marissa's firm. Vale Orchard and Marissa pays Ethan back or they save it. It is bribery. Eleanor, they are funneling public funds out of the project you are managing. I closed my eyes. The picture finally snapped into focus. It was horrifyingly perfect. Marissa was not just a mistress. She was a conduit. She was the bagman and I was the shield. I was the chief operating officer. I held the files. I signed the oversight reports. If this money-laundering scheme was discovered, Ethan and Marissa would claim they were just low-level consultants. They would point the finger at the person with the fiduciary responsibility. They would point the finger at me. Ethan had not just fallen out of love with me. He was actively setting me up to take the fall for a federal crime. That was why he handed her the envelope with the wax seal. It wasn't a love letter. It was likely the countersigned vendor agreement that authorized the flow of funds. Eleanor, Grant asked, Are you there? I am here, I said, my voice trembling with a rage so cold it felt like ice water in my veins. Grant, send me the file. Send me everything. The bank transfers, the dates, the Civic Horizons connection. Sending it now, he said. What are you going to do? I am going to cut the rope, I said, and I am going to let them fall. I hung up and looked at Diane. We have to move fast, I told her. This isn't just a divorce anymore. This is a RICO case waiting to happen. If I don't report this, I am an accomplice. Diane nodded, her face grim. If you go to the police now, the investigation will freeze all assets, including yours. You will be stuck in legal limbo for years. We need to secure your exit from the marriage first. How mediation? Diane said. We have the mediation session scheduled for Friday. We push hard. We use the threat of the fraud without revealing we know the full extent of the criminal kickback to force him to sign a settlement. We get him to sign a document stating clearly that you have no involvement, knowledge, or financial interest in Vale Orchard Consulting. He will sign it, I said. He is desperate to keep the company secret. Exactly. Diane said. We use his greed against him. We get the separation of assets. Once the ink is dry and you are legally severed from his debts and his LLC, then we drop the hammer. And Northline, I asked, I cannot sit on this. If the city finds out before I tell them, I am finished. You file an internal compliance report, Diane instructed, today, but you do it carefully. You report suspicious activity involving a vendor. You do not name Ethan. You name Marissa and Vale Orchard. You stick to the facts found in the public domain and the company's server. You protect your license. I spent the next 2 hours in Diane's office drafting the report. It was a masterpiece of corporate self-defense. I detailed the unauthorized login. I detailed the conflict of interest regarding Marissa Vale. I detailed the anomaly in the vendor payments Grant had found. I submitted it through Northline's anonymous whistleblower portal, but I kept a time-stamped copy from my personal records. By the time I left Diane's office, it was late afternoon. The city was gray and drizzling rain. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. My phone chimed. A text from Ethan. Please, Elena, I know you are meeting with lawyers. You don't have to do this. I will give you whatever you want. I will sign the house over to you. I will sign the cars. Just please do not send anything to Northline. We can work this out. I stared at the screen. He was terrified. He wasn't worried about losing me. He wasn't worried about losing our marriage. He was terrified of Northline. That confirmed everything. The company was the weak point. If Northline found out, The kickback scheme would collapse and he would go to prison. He was trying to buy my silence with the house he had already mortgaged behind my back. I felt a surge of disgust so potent I almost wretched, but I pushed it down. I needed him to feel safe for just 48 more hours. I needed him to walk into that mediation room thinking he could still maneuver. I typed a reply. "We will discuss the settlement at mediation on Friday." He replied instantly. "Can I see you? Please, just 5 minutes. I need to explain the context before you sign anything. Meet me after the mediation. Please just hear me out." I looked at the phone. A face-to-face meeting. It was risky, but it was also an opportunity. If he was desperate, he would talk. And if he talked, I could get a confession on tape that would bury him if the paperwork failed. "Fine," I typed. "Friday 6:00, the plaza, behind the mediation center, 10 minutes. "Thank you," he replied. "Thank you, baby. You won't regret it." I put the phone away. I walked through the rain toward my car. I had the evidence of the forgery. I had the evidence of the kickback. I had the cooperation of the other victim. And now I had a date with my husband to watch him beg. Friday was going to be the end of the world for Ethan Pierce, but for me, it was going to be the first day of my life. I unlocked my car door and sat in the driver's seat, listening to the rain against the roof. I opened the file Grant had sent me on my phone. I scrolled through the bank transfers one last time. Civic Horizons to Vale Orchard, $40,000. Vale Orchard to Ethan Pierce, $10,000. He sold me out for $10,000 a month. That was the price of my loyalty. That was the price of 7 years of marriage. He had appraised me, depreciated me, and sold me off like a used asset. I started the engine. The windshield wipers sliced back and forth, clearing the view. "Okay, Ethan," I said to the empty car. "Let's make a deal." The mediation center was located in a beige building that smelled of stale coffee and expensive compromise. It was Switzerland for people who wanted to destroy each other but did not want to pay for a jury trial. The conference room was windowless, featuring a long oval table designed to keep combatants at a safe distance. I sat on one side, flanked by Diane Carver and Ronan. On the other side sat Ethan. He was wearing a soft gray sweater, not a suit. It was a calculated choice. He was trying to look vulnerable. He was trying to look like the wounded husband who had been neglected by his ambitious, cold-hearted wife. Next to him was his lawyer, Caleb Norton. I knew of Caleb. He was a flashy attorney who specialized in high-conflict divorces, usually representing the spouse who wanted a payout. He had a smile that looked like it had been sharpened with a file. "Let us begin." The mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Anderson, said softly, "The goal today is an amicable separation of assets and a dissolution of the marriage." Caleb leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Your Honor, if I may call you that out of habit, my client is heartbroken. This is not about assets for him. This is about a marriage that failed because of abandonment. Mrs. Lee has been married to her job for 5 years. Ethan sought comfort because he was lonely. We believe that creates a context for spousal support. Ethan supported her rise to the Soite. He sacrificed his own career ambitions to manage their home. I felt a vein throb in my temple. Managed the home. He hadn't unloaded the dishwasher in 3 years. Diane did not look up from her notes. She waited for Caleb to finish his speech about Ethan's emotional suffering. Then she adjusted her glasses and opened the thick binder in front of her. "Are you finished?" Diane asked. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Caleb blinked. "We are establishing the narrative. The narrative is irrelevant," Diane said. "The math is what matters." She slid a single sheet of paper across the table, then another, then another. She laid them out like tarot cards of doom. "Exhibit A," Diane said, "bank records showing transfers totaling $25,000 to Vale Orchard Consulting over the last 10 months. Exhibit B, photographs of Ethan Pierce and Marissa Vale, the owner of said LLC, at the Hawthorne Room 3 days ago. Exhibit C, a flight confirmation for Ethan's mother, proving she was in Florida when Ethan claimed he was taking her to a doctor here in the city." Ethan's face did not move, but his hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. "And finally," Diane said, sliding the last document forward with a heavy thud. Exhibit D, a loan addendum for $50,000 drawn against the marital home equity digitally signed by Alina Lee, but according to the IP log provided by the bank, the signature was executed on an iPad registered to Ethan Pierce at a time when Alina was in a recorded deposition. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a distant engine. Caleb Norton picked up the loan document. He looked at the IP log. Then he looked at Ethan. The sharpened smile vanished. Lawyers can handle adultery. They can handle neglect. But they hate it when their clients lie to them about felonies. "This is," Caleb started, then cleared his throat. "This is a misunderstanding. The funds were used for household improvements." "There were no improvements," Diane said. "The money went to Veal Orchard Consulting. We have the trace." Ethan spoke up then. His voice was shaky, pitching for sympathy. "It was an investment. I was trying to build something for us. Elena, I wanted to surprise you with a passive income stream so you could quit the stressful job. I did it for you." He looked at me, his eyes wide and wet. He actually summoned tears. "I was just so lonely. Elena, you were always at the office. Marissa, she listened to me. She made me feel like I mattered. But I still love you. We can fix this. Just give me a chance to make the money back." It was a good performance. If I hadn't seen him laughing with her at the restaurant, I might have felt a twinge of guilt that I had seen the envelope. I leaned forward. I placed my elbows on the table and looked him directly in the eyes. "I don't care about the cheating, Ethan," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly so. "I don't even care about the loneliness. I just have one question," Ethan sniffled, looking hopeful. "But anything." "The wax-sealed envelope," I said. "The one you slid across the table to her at the Hawthorne room. What was inside it?" Ethan froze. The tears stopped instantly. His face went blank, stripped of its mask. "I don't know what you are talking about," he stammered. "It was just a birthday card." "It was a document," I said, and she looked at it like it was a check. "Was it a contract?" "Ethan, was it a vendor agreement for the city project?" At the mention of vendor agreement, Caleb Norton's head snapped toward his client. "Ethan," Caleb said, his voice dropping an octave, "you told me Vale Orchard was a hobby business. Is there a contract involved?" "It is nothing," Ethan said, his voice rising in panic. "She is crazy. She is paranoid." "Vale Orchard Consulting," Diane interrupted, reading from a new sheet, "received $40,000 from a city intermediary last month, and 10,000 of that came back to you. That is not a hobby, Mr. Norton. That is a kickback scheme, and your client forged my client's signature to fund the initial buying." Caleb Norton closed his folder. He sat back in his chair and looked at Ethan with pure disgust. He realized he was sitting next to a radioactive isotope. If this went to court, Caleb wouldn't just lose. He would be dragged into a fraud investigation. "We are taking a recess," Caleb said sharply. "No recess," Diane said. "We settle this now, or we walk out of here and go straight to the district attorney with the forgery evidence, and then we go to Northline Strategies with the compliance report." Ethan turned pale. "No, you can't go to Northline, Elena. Please, you will ruin me." "You ruined yourself," I said. Diane pushed the settlement agreement forward. "Here is the offer. We divide the assets 5,050, excluding the debt you incurred fraudulently. You take full responsibility for the $50,000 loan. You pay back the $25,000 of marital funds you siphoned to the mistress. And most importantly, you sign this addendum stating clearly that Elena Lee has no ownership, knowledge, or involvement in Vale Orchard Consulting." "I can't pay that back right now," Ethan whispered. "I don't have the liquidity." "Then you take it out of your share of the house equity," Diane said ruthlessly. "Sign the paper, Ethan, or Elena makes the call to the bank fraud department in 5 minutes." Ethan looked at Caleb for help. Caleb just stared at the wall, refusing to make eye contact. He was done. Ethan picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly the tip tapped against the paper. He read the terms. He stopped at the last page. "I want a non-disclosure agreement," he said suddenly. He looked up, a spark of desperation in his eyes. "I will sign everything. I will take the debt, but I want a full NDA. The leaner cannot talk about the marriage, the divorce, or Vale Orchard Consulting to anyone, including Northline. He was trying to plug the leak. He knew that if I talked, his scheme with Marissa and my boss, Marcus Thorne, would collapse. Absolutely not, I said. It is standard, Ethan argued. High net worth divorces always have NDAs. I will agree to privacy regarding our personal life. I said, I will not tell people you snore. I will not tell people you cried today, but I will not sign an NDA that covers illegal financial activity or corporate compliance. I will not let you use a divorce settlement to gag me from reporting a crime that affects my license. That is a deal breaker, Ethan said, trying to sound tough. Diane reached for her phone. Okay, deal breaker accepted. I am dialing the fraud unit. She started to type. Wait, Ethan screamed. He lunged across the table to stop her hand. Caleb grabbed him by the shoulder and slammed him back into his chair. Control yourself, Caleb hissed. You have no leverage, Ethan. Sign the damn paper before she has you arrested. Ethan slumped in his chair. He looked small. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the collection plate. Fine, he whispered. Personal privacy only. Diane quickly redlined the document, initialed the changes, and slid it over. Ethan signed. He signed the asset division. He signed the debt admission, and he signed the affidavit declaring me innocent of his business dealings. It was done. The mediator notarized the signatures with a stamp that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. We are adjourned, the mediator said. Ethan stood up. He looked at me one last time. There was no love left in his eyes, only fear and a strange lingering resentment. You won, he said softly. I hope it keeps you warm at night. It won't keep me warm, I said, but it will keep me free. He walked out, followed by a furious-looking Caleb. I sat there for a moment, letting the adrenaline drain out of my system. I felt elated. I had severed the limb to save the body. I was divorced. I was safe from his debt. I had the affidavit that would shield me from the inevitable fallout of the kickback scheme. Good work, Diane said, packing up her binder. You kept your cool, he folded. He was terrified of Northline, I said. That confirms it. The real danger isn't the divorce. It is the company. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I walked out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I took a deep breath, the first full lungful of air I had taken in days. I reached into my bag to turn my phone back on. It buzzed immediately in my hand. A call. It was not Grant. It was not my assistant. It was the direct line for the Northline Strategies Executive Office. I answered. This is Alina. Alina. The voice on the other end was sharp-clipped. It was the head of Human Resources. We need you to come to the third-floor conference room immediately. The Compliance Committee is in session. I am out of the office, I said, checking my watch. It was 4:30. I can be there in 20 minutes. Make it 15, the voice said. And Alina, bring your company laptop and your badge. The line went dead. My stomach dropped through the floor. They didn't ask you to bring your badge unless they were planning to take it away. Diane looked at me, seeing the color drain from my face. What is it? They called me in. I said compliance. They want my badge. They are moving fast. Diane said Ethan or Marissa must have triggered something, or Marcus Thorne is making his move to frame you before you can expose him. I have the affidavit, I said, clutching the folder with the fresh ink. I have the proof he acted alone. Go, Diane said. Do not say anything without the document in front of you. And remember, you are the whistleblower, not the suspect. Act like it. I ran to the elevator. The victory in the mediation room evaporated. I had won the battle against my husband, but the war for my life was just starting. The elevator ride to the third floor took exactly 12 seconds. I counted them. In the corporate world, silence is usually a precursor to noise. And the silence inside that metal box was heavy with the static of impending disaster. I clutched my laptop bag and the file folder containing the settlement agreement Ethan had signed less than an hour ago. When the door slid open, the hallway was empty. The administrative assistants were gone for the day. The only light came from the glass-walled conference room at the end of the corridor. I walked toward it. I did not hurry. I adjusted my blazer, checked my badge, and pushed the door open. 3 people were waiting for me. Linda from Human Resources, a woman who usually smiled but currently looked like an undertaker, the general counsel for Northline, a man named Robert Vance, who I had worked with for 5 years, and a stranger, a man in a dark suit with no tie, sitting in the corner with a notepad. "Sit down, Eleanor," Linda said. She did not offer me water. I sat. I placed my laptop on the table, but did not open it. I was told this is a compliance matter. It is. Robert Vance said he slid a folder across the polished table. At 3:00 this afternoon, we received an anonymous whistleblower complaint. The complaint alleges that you have been leaking proprietary data regarding the Urban Development Initiative to unauthorized third parties, specifically to a firm called Vale Orchard Consulting. I felt a cold flash of anger, but I kept my face immobile. It was not a random whistleblower. It was Ethan or Marissa. They were trying to strike first. They knew I was closing in. So they decided to burn my reputation to discredit me. "The complaint is false," I said. "We have logs," Robert said, tapping a stack of papers. "There was a remote login to the secure financial server at 3:14 in the morning on Tuesday. That login used your credentials, Eleanor. The user downloaded the projected bid variances. 2 days later, those variances appeared in a proposal submitted by Vale Orchard Consulting." He looked at me with disappointment. "You are the chief operating officer. You know that sharing bid data is immediate grounds for termination and potential litigation." I reached into my bag. I pulled out the flash drive Marcus from security had given me and the printed report I had prepared days ago. "I am aware of the login," I said, my voice steady. "I was alerted to it immediately because I have 2-factor authentication on my personal devices, and I did not receive a prompt that night. That login did not come from my laptop. It came from a spoofed IP address." I slid my own report across the table. "This is an internal security assessment provided by Marcus in IT." I continued, "It confirms that the device used to access the server was not company-issued. It was an external device using a VPN. Furthermore, here is my timeline. At 3:14 in the morning on Tuesday, I was in a hotel room at the Rivergate Hotel. The hotel Wi-Fi logs, which I have subpoenaed for my own divorce proceedings, show my devices were offline." Robert picked up the report. He scanned it, his eyebrows knit together. "Divorce proceedings?" Linda asked, her voice softening slightly. "That brings me to the second point," I said. "You mentioned Vale Orchard Consulting." The anonymous tip likely failed to mention that the principal of that firm, Marissa Vale, is currently in a relationship with my husband, Ethan Pierce. The room went deadly silent. The stranger in the corner stopped writing and looked up. "I am currently in the process of a divorce," I said. "I signed the asset separation agreement 45 minutes ago." I formally disclosed this conflict of interest in a report I submitted to the anonymous portal yesterday. If you check your backlog, you will find it. Robert looked at Linda. "Check the portal." Linda typed furiously on her laptop. A moment later, she nodded. "It is here. Submitted yesterday at 4:52 in the afternoon. Subject vendor irregularities and personal conflict of interest." I leaned back. "I am not the leak, Robert. I am the target. My husband and his partner are trying to frame me because I discovered they were using his connection to me to bid on city contracts." Robert looked relieved, but only for a moment. He reached into his folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "If that is true, Eleanor, then explain this." He placed the document in front of me. It was a contract addendum. It authorized an expedited payment of $40,000 to a subcontractor for logistical support. At the bottom of the page was my signature. It was not a digital block. It looked like a wet signature written in blue ink. It had the distinct loop of the L that I had perfected over years of signing checks. This was sent to the city controller 3 days ago. Robert said it authorized funds that were eventually routed to Vale Orchard Consulting. "If you didn't sign it, who did?" My hands went cold. Ethan, he had access to my home office. He had access to old contracts. He must have scanned my signature, lifted it in Photoshop, and placed it on this document. "I did not sign this," I said. "I have never seen this vendor name before." "It looks like your signature," Robert said, "and the city accepted it." "It is a forgery," I stated, "and I can prove a pattern of behavior." I opened my laptop. I pulled up the email Diane had prepared for this exact moment. "My attorney, Diane Carver, is sending you a file right now," I said. "It contains a sworn affidavit from a forensic document examiner regarding the bank loan taken out in my name 3 weeks ago. My husband, Ethan Pierce, forged my signature to steal $50,000 of our home equity. He admitted to this in mediation today. The signed admission of guilt is included in the file." I looked Robert in the eye. "He has forged my signature to steal from me. Now he is forging my signature to steal from the company. If you fire me, you are firing the whistleblower and protecting the fraudster." Robert's phone pinged. He looked at the email Diane had just sent. He read the admission of guilt from the mediation. He took a deep breath and rubbed his temples. "This is a mess, Elir. A massive liability mess." "I know," I said. "That is why I am helping you clean it up." The stranger in the corner stood up. He walked to the table. "I am David, sir," he said. "I am from Arbaline Compliance. The board brought us in an hour ago." Arbaline. They were the cleaners. They were the ones companies called when they needed to bury a scandal or prosecute an executive. "Mrs. Lee," David said, "your defense is compelling. The timeline regarding the bank forgery creates a strong reasonable doubt regarding this contract. However, until we can forensically verify that the signature on the city contract is a digital manipulation, we cannot have you in the building. The risk is too high." "I understand," I said. "We are placing you on administrative leave with full pay effective immediately." David said your access to the servers will be revoked. You will work remotely on non-sensitive tasks only. We will seize your company laptop for forensic analysis. "You can have it," I said, pushing the laptop forward. "You will find nothing but work." "We will also need to interview your husband," Robert added. "He is not my husband anymore," I said, standing up. "Legally speaking, and good luck getting him to talk. He is likely destroying evidence as we speak." I handed over my badge. It felt like surrendering a weapon. I walked out of the conference room, my head high, but my insides were trembling. I was suspended. I was a suspect. They believed me, but they didn't trust me. I walked out of the building and into the cool evening air. The sun had set. The city lights were blurring in the damp air. My personal phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "This is Alina. You think you are so smart." The voice hissed. It was Ethan. He sounded drunk or manic or both. "You think you can corner me?" he shouted. "I signed your stupid paper. Elena, I gave you the house. I gave you everything, and you still sent the dogs after me. Marissa just got a call from the city. They are pausing the contract." "I didn't send anyone." "Ethan," I said, pressing the record button on my screen. "You sent a forged contract to the city. You did that." "I did what I had to do," he screamed. "We were so close. We were going to be set for life, and you just had to look at the numbers. You always have to look at the numbers. You are ruining my future. Elena, you are burning everything down because you are jealous." "I am not jealous," I said calmly. "I am compliant. Watch your back," he spat. "You think you are safe because you have a lawyer. You have no idea what is coming." The line clicked dead. I saved the recording immediately. I emailed it to Diane and to David, sir, at Arbaline. Subject: threat from suspect regarding ongoing investigation. That call was a mistake. He had just admitted to a motive. He had admitted the contract was paused. He was panicking. My phone buzzed again. A text from Ronan. "Video file attached." I opened it. The video was grainy, taken from a distance in a parking lot. It showed Ethan and Marissa standing next to her red Mercedes. Ethan was waving his arms, shouting. Marissa was shoving him away. I turned up the volume. The wind carried their voices. "You said she was stupid." Marissa screamed. "You said she was too busy to notice. You said she wouldn't dare go to the company because she was scared of losing her job. She tricked me," Ethan yelled back. "She set me up at the mediation." "You idiot," Marissa shrieked. "My name is on the LLC. If they trace the money, I go to jail, not you. You fix this, Ethan." You fix this or I swear to God I will tell them everything." She got in her car and slammed the door. Ethan was left standing there, kicking the tire of his sedan. I watched the video twice. Marissa was cracking. She realized that Ethan had sold her a lie. The lie that I was a passive, ignorant wife who would quietly sign whatever was put in front of her. She realized she was the one with her name on the bank accounts, receiving the story funds. Grant was right. They were turning on each other. I dialed Grant. "It is time," I said when he answered. I saw the alert. Grant said Marissa's accounts just got flagged. "She's trying to move money out of the LLC. Let her try." I said Northline suspended me pending investigation. "They have brought in Arboline." "That is good." Grant said Arboline is ruthless. "If they find the kickback, they will prosecute. They have a forged document with my signature on it." I said Ethan tried to frame me for the vendor authorization. "I have the trace," Grant said. "I can prove the money went from that vendor to Civic Horizons and then to Vale Orchard. The money flow proves you didn't benefit. Why would you forge a document to send money to your husband's mistress?" "Exactly." I said, "but we need to make it official. We need to stop playing defense." "What do you want to do?" "We file a formal complaint." I said, "Not anonymous, not internal. We file a joint complaint with the City Oversight Committee. You as the auditor who found the irregularity. Me as the Northline executive who was identity thefted. We put our names on it. We blow the whistle so loud they can hear it in the next state. If we do that," Grant warned, "there is no going back. The city will freeze the entire project. Your company will lose the contract. You might never work in this town again." I looked up at the Northline building. My office was dark. "I don't care about the job anymore, Grant." I said, "I care about the truth." Ethan said I was ruining his future. "I want to make sure I finish the job." "Write the draft." Brad said, "I will sign it. Meet me at my lawyer's office in an hour." I said, "We are going to end this tonight." I got into my car. The threat from Ethan still echoed in my ears. "You have no idea what is coming." He was wrong. I knew exactly what was coming. The truth was coming, and unlike his lies, the truth did not need a wax seal to be valid. It just needed to be heard. I put the car in gear and drove into the night, ready to drop the bomb that would clear the rubble of my life. The submission of the formal complaint was not a dramatic event. There was no cinematic music, no slow-motion walk down a hallway. It was just the click of a mouse button at 9:00 in the morning. I sat in Diane Carver's conference room, my laptop open on the mahogany table. Next to me, Grant sat with his own device. We counted down 3, 2, 1, send. My report went to the Northline Strategies Ethics Committee and the City Oversight Board. It was titled Formal Complaint Regarding Vendor Fraud and Internal Corruption. I had stripped every ounce of emotion from the document. There were no mentions of betrayal, heartbreak, or the woman in the red dress. There were only facts, IP logs, bank transfer records provided by Grant, the affidavit of forgery regarding the bank loan, the timestamps of the unauthorized server access. Grant submitted his own filing simultaneously. He sent a formal request to the bank holding his and Marissa's joint assets, flagging them for suspicious activity due to a pending separation suit. He also filed a report with the State Accountancy Board regarding the irregularities in Vale Orchard Consulting. "It is done," Grant said, closing his laptop. "She is locked out. If she tries to buy a cup of coffee this morning, her card will decline. Now we wait for the blast." I said we did not have to wait long. At 11:00, my phone began to buzz with notifications from my former team members. They were not texts. They were encrypted signal messages. The rumor mill was spinning. Security guards had been seen on the executive floor. But the first explosion did not happen at Northline. It happened at Brightstone Creative, the mid-sized advertising agency where Ethan worked. I learned about it later from Ronan, who had a contact in the building security. Apparently, the City Oversight Board had moved with terrifying speed. Once they saw the allegation of vendor fraud involving a city grant, they contacted every employer linked to the principals of the fraudulent LLC. They called Brightstone to verify Ethan's employment status and to subpoena his work emails. Ethan was pulled out of a pitch meeting. He was marched to HR. They asked him about the $50,000 of client entertainment expenses he had charged to his company card expenses that Ronan's investigation revealed were actually payments for the furniture in Marissa's new apartment. Ethan panicked. He didn't have a lawyer present. He tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that he was pampering the client. He tried to leave the building to call his wife. They confiscated his phone and suspended him. He was escorted out of the building with nothing but his car keys. Meanwhile, at North Line, the silence I had left behind was being filled with chaos. David Sire from Arbol Line Compliance called me at 100. Mrs. Lee, his voice was clipped. Professional, we have received your dossier. It matches the forensic data we are recovering from your laptop. But we found something else. What? I asked. We found the origin of the leak. David said, you were right. It wasn't you. But it wasn't just an external hack either. Someone on the inside gave them the door code. He paused and I could hear papers shuffling. We traced the authorization for the Vale Orchard contract. It was approved manually in the system. The user ID belonged to Marcus Thorne. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. Marcus, my mentor, the man who had sent me a fruit basket when I was sick last year, the man who had joked about being the captain of the ship. He was the one sleeping with the enemy, or at least profiting from her. He is trying to spin it, David continued. Thorne just produced an email chain. He claims you forwarded him the request and vouched for Marissa Vale. He has a printed email with your header on it, dated 2 months ago. I never wrote that email, I said firmly. We know, David said. Our IT team analyzed the header information on his digital copy. It is a clumsy forgery. The routing timestamps don't align with the server logs. He created it this morning, backdated it, and tried to plant it in the archive. He was trying to frame you to cover his own signature. So what happens now? Now, David said, we are looking at a conspiracy to defraud the city. Thorne is currently being interviewed by legal. I suggest you stay close to your phone. The dominoes were falling, clicking against each other with a satisfying rhythm. But the most dangerous piece was still standing. Marissa Grant called me at 300. She called me. Grant said she is hysterical. Her credit cards are frozen. She is at the bank, and they told her she is under investigation for money laundering. She wanted me to fix it. She thought it was a glitch. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, Grant said. His voice was cold, devoid of the warmth I had seen in the cafe. I told her I saw the transfers. I told her I knew about the apartment. And I told her that if she wanted to stay out of prison, she had better start talking before Ethan does. You gave her a lifeline, I said. I gave her a choice, Grant corrected. I told her that Ethan is the one who forged the signatures. I told her Ethan is the one who set up the deal with Thorne. I told her she is just the bagman, and bagmen go to jail unless they turn in the boss. It worked. Marissa did not go home to comfort her lover. She went straight to the office of the independent investigator appointed by the city. She brought her phone. She brought screenshots of text messages where Ethan explicitly told her to sign the papers and don't worry about Elena. She is clueless. She handed them, Ethan on a silver platter to save herself. She painted herself as a naive girlfriend who was manipulated by a predatory older man, Ethan, who used her company to hide his debts. It was a lie. Of course, she was just as greedy as he was. But in the legal world, the first person to confess gets the deal. Ethan was alone. He had lost his job. He had lost his mistress. He had lost his money. And he knew exactly who was responsible. I was staying at Taylor's apartment that night. The Rivergate Hotel felt too exposed. Taylor lived in a secure building with a doorman, but even castles have cracks. At 8:00 in the evening, the buzzer rang. It is a man, the doorman said over the intercom. He says he is your husband. He says it is an emergency. Do not let him up. I said, tell him to leave. I am trying, ma'am, but he is agitated. I looked at Taylor. She was already dialing the precinct. He is here, I said to the dispatcher. Ethan Pierce. I have a pending divorce action and evidence of financial fraud against him. He is aggressive and demanding entry. 2 minutes later, there was pounding on the apartment door. He had slipped past the doorman while a resident was exiting. The leaner, Ethan screamed. His voice was cracked, desperate. "Alina, open the door. You can't do this. You are destroying my life." I stood in the middle of the living room. I did not go to the door. I did not shout back. I stood perfectly still, holding my phone, recording the audio. "You turned her against me," he yelled, kicking the wood. "Marissa won't answer my calls. My accounts are locked. You did this. You planned this whole thing." Ethan Pierce Taylor shouted through the door, her voice booming. "The police are on their way. If you don't leave, you will be arrested for trespassing and harassment. I just want to talk to my wife," he sobbed. The anger was breaking into sheer terror. "Alina, please. I am sorry. I will fix it. Just call them off. Tell them it was a mistake. They will listen to you. You are the CEO. You can fix anything." He still didn't get it. He still thought I existed to clean up his messes. He thought my competence was his safety net. "I am not your wife anymore," Ethan S. said. I spoke loudly enough for the recording, but I did not scream. "And I am not your fixer." We heard the elevator ding. We heard heavy footsteps. We heard the authoritative voices of police officers. "Sir, step away from the door. Hands where we can see them." "No, you don't understand. She's my wife. We are just fighting." "Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back." I watched through the peephole. I saw Ethan being pressed against the hallway wall. He looked disheveled, his eyes wild and red. He looked nothing like the man who had worn the navy blazer at the Hawthorne Room. He looked like a ruin. They didn't arrest him. Not yet. They escorted him out of the building and gave him a formal trespass warning, but the police report was generated. Incident number 4921. I sent the incident number to Diane immediately. By 9:00 the next morning, Diane was in front of a judge. She played the voicemail where he said, "You have no idea what is coming." She played the recording of him screaming at the door. She presented the police report. The judge signed the temporary restraining order. Ethan Pierce was legally barred from coming within 500 ft of me, my workplace, or my temporary residence. At 10:00, my email pinged from Robert Vance, General Counsel, Northline Strategies. Subject: Urgent Final Compliance Review. Alina, the internal investigation conducted by Arbaline Compliance has concluded. We require your presence at the headquarters at 2:00 this afternoon for the final review and disposition of the case. Please enter through the main lobby. Security has been notified to clear your entry. This was it. The disposition of the case. That was corporate speak for the verdict. They had interviewed Thorne. They had the evidence from Grant. They had the police reports. Now they had to decide whether I was a victim to be reinstated or a liability to be discarded. I dressed carefully. I wore a suit of charcoal gray, sharp and arm-alike. I pulled my hair back. I applied my makeup with precision. Grant met me in the lobby of the Northline building. He wasn't allowed up, but he wanted to be there. "You look ready." Grant said, "I am." I said, "Did Marissa get a lawyer?" "She got a public defender." Grant said, "I froze the joint accounts. She can't afford a private attorney. She is negotiating a plea deal with the district attorney. She is going to testify against Ethan and Thorne in exchange for probation." "Good," I said. I looked at the turnstiles. The last time I was here, I had surrendered my badge. Today, the security guard nodded at me and buzzed me through. "Good luck, Alina," Grant said. I took the elevator to the executive floor. The silence was back, but it felt different this time. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of respect. I walked into the boardroom. The entire executive committee was there. Robert Vance, Linder from HR, David Sir from Arbaline, and at the head of the table sat the CEO, a man named Jonathan Crest, who rarely involved himself in operational disputes. There was one empty chair, and there was one person missing. Marcus Thorne was not there. "Please sit down, Alina," Jonathan Crest said. I sat. I placed my hands on the table. "We have reviewed the findings from Arbaline." Jonathan began. "The forensic evidence is conclusive. Marcus Thorne manipulated the vendor approval process to channel funds to Vale Orchard Consulting. He forged your digital approval. He attempted to frame you to cover his tracks." He paused. "Marcus Thorne was terminated for cause an hour ago. He is currently being escorted out of the building by federal authorities. We have turned over all evidence of the kickback scheme to the district attorney. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. And you, Eleanor Jonathan, continued, you followed protocol. You reported the conflict. You blew the whistle even when it put your own reputation at risk. You acted with the integrity we expect from this leadership team. He slid a small box across the table. It was my badge. We want you back, he said, effective immediately. We are also prepared to offer you a retention package to compensate you for the distress caused by this investigation. We need you to lead the cleanup of the Urban Development Initiative. You are the only one who knows where the bodies are buried. I looked at the badge. It was my identity. It was what I had worked for my entire adult life. But then I looked at the faces around the table. They were relieved, yes, but they were also looking at me with a new kind of weariness. I was the woman who had taken down her own husband and her own boss. I was dangerous. I appreciate the offer, I said slowly, and I accept the reinstatement. I will clean up the project. I will ensure the city gets every dime back. Excellent, Jonathan said. But I added, I have one condition regarding the final legal approach toward Ethan Pierce. Name it. Robert Vance said, Ethan is going to try to settle. I said, he is going to try to offer a plea to avoid jail time, claiming he was just a pawn of Marcus Thorne. He will try to minimize his role. I opened my folder and pulled out the final piece of evidence I had been saving. It was the original photo I had taken at the restaurant, the one showing the wax seal, and next to it I placed a blown-up image of the document contained in that envelope, a document Grant had recovered from Marissa's trash folder. It was not just a contract. It was an indemnification agreement. Ethan had drafted a clause trying to make me personally liable for any compliance oversight in the project, effectively selling my safety to buy his insurance. He tried to sell me, I said to the room. He didn't just steal from the company. He drafted legal language to make the COO me the fall guy for his crimes. This proves premeditation. It proves malice. I pushed the photo toward the general counsel. I want Northline to press full charges, I said. No settlements, no quiet dismissals. I want the company to pursue him for corporate espionage and fraud with the full weight of our legal department. I want him buried under so many lawsuits that he will never see the sun again. Robert Vance looked at the document. He looked at the CEO. Jonathan Crest nodded once. Done. Jonathan said, we will crush him. I picked up my badge and clipped it to my lapel. Then I will see you at the status meeting tomorrow. I said. I walked out of the boardroom. I had my job back. I had my name back. And tomorrow I was going to watch from the front row as the legal machinery of a billion-dollar corporation rolled over the man who thought he could outsmart me. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in a week, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just finished the meal. The air in the executive boardroom was so still it felt vacuum-sealed. There were no dramatic gasps. There were no tears. There was only the sound of David Sears' voice reading the final report from Arbaline Compliance and the rhythmic tap of his finger against the glass table. We have triangulated the data, David stated, his voice devoid of inflection. The log files are conclusive. The unauthorized access to the bid server originated from a device registered to Mr. Ethan Pierce. The digital signature on the vendor approval form was a copy-paste forgery likely lifted from a previous year's tax return. And the money trail is linear. Funds moved from the city project through the intermediary to Vail, Orchard Consulting, and finally to personal accounts held by MS. Marissa Vail and Mr. E. Pierce. He looked up at the CEO Jonathan Crest, but we found the smoking gun in the physical evidence provided by Mrs. Lee. David reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was a high-resolution print out of the document that had been inside the wax-sealed envelope at the Hawthorne Room. Grant had recovered the digital file from Marissa's hard drive, but seeing it on paper made it feel like a weapon. This document, David said, sliding it across the table, is what Mr. Pierce handed to Miss Vail that night. It is not just a partnership agreement. It includes a specific indemnification rider. I leaned forward. I had not seen the full text until this moment. I read the highlighted paragraph, my breath caught in my throat. In the event of a regulatory audit or compliance failure regarding the Urban Development Initiative, the undersigned operating officer assumes full personal and financial liability for all vendor selection processes, absolving the consulting partners of negligence. It was a trap. Ethan had not just used me to get the job. He had drafted a legal clause that would make me the fall guy if they got caught. He was going to trick me into signing it, maybe slipped into a stack of mortgage papers or insurance forms so that when the police came, he could point to my signature and say, "She knew. She took responsibility. I am just the husband." He wasn't just stealing from me. He was planning to send me to prison to save himself. I looked at the paper. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. The man who had promised to protect me at the altar had spent his evenings drafting a contract to destroy me. He was selling me, I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. He was selling me as his insurance policy. Exactly, David said. Which brings us to the conclusion. Lee is not a suspect. She is the intended victim of a corporate frame-up orchestrated by Marcus Thorne and Ethan Pierce. Jonathan Crest stood up. He looked at me with a mixture of apology and respect. "We are closing the internal investigation." Jonathan said Marcus Thorne has been suspended and handed over to the authorities. "We are filing criminal charges against Ethan Pierce and Marissa Vale for fraud, corporate espionage, and forgery." The leaner, "Your name is clear." Diane Carver, who had been sitting silently next to me, finally spoke. She opened her folder and placed the mediation agreement on the table. "And just to ensure there is no wiggle room," Diane said, "this is the divorce settlement signed by Mr. Pierce 2 days ago in Article 4. He explicitly admits that Alina Lee had no knowledge of war involvement with Vale Orchard Consulting. He signed it to get a quick payout. That signature just stripped him of his only defense. He cannot claim she was a co-conspirator. He certified her innocence to get a check. It was the checkmate. Ethan had signed his own confession because he was too greedy to wait. The legal department will take it from here." Jonathan said the police are waiting for him. The meeting adjourned. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my head was clear. I walked out of the boardroom and toward the elevators. The weight of the last week was beginning to lift, replaced by a hollow, ringing silence. I reached the lobby. The glass doors to the street were visible, promising fresh air. Then I heard the shouting. Eleanor, you have to talk to me." I stopped. Ethan was in the lobby. He must have received the call from the police or his lawyer. He looked nothing like the composed man in the navy blazer. His hair was wild, his shirt was untucked, and his face was a mask of sheer panic. 2 security guards were holding him back by the arms, but he was threshing, trying to reach the turnstiles. "Let her go," he screamed at the guards. "That is my wife. She can explain this." He saw me. He stopped struggling for a second. His eyes locked onto mine. "Eleanor," he gasped. "Baby, please tell them. Tell them it was just a misunderstanding. You can't let them take me. They are talking about 10 years. Eleanor, 10 years." I walked toward the turnstiles. I did not cross them. I stood 5 feet away, separated by the barrier of security glass and the ruin of our marriage. "You're destroying my life," he shouted, seeing I wasn't moving to help him. "I did everything for us, and you are ruining me." The lobby went silent. Employees froze. The receptionist stopped typing. Everyone was watching the COO and her husband. I looked at him. I looked for the man I had loved. I looked for the man who brought me soup when I had the flu. I looked for the man who held my hand at his mother's birthday parties. He was gone. All that was left was a frightened, selfish stranger who had tried to trade my freedom for a condo in the city. "You didn't do it for us, Ethan," I said. My voice was steady, calm, and terrifyingly final. "And you didn't love me?" "I did. I do," he sobbed. "No," I said. "You sent me texts saying, 'Love you,' while you were sitting 3 tables away with another woman. You used those words as a distraction. And that envelope, you were going to let me go to jail for you." I took a step closer to the glass. "You sold my name to save your own skin. This is not me ruining you. This is the bill coming due, and you are going to pay it." I nodded to the head of security. "Get him out of my building," I said. Eliner, he screamed as they dragged him backward. Eliner. The revolving door spun. He was pushed out onto the sidewalk. I watched as a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. I saw the officers step out. I saw the handcuffs glint in the afternoon sun. I turned away before they put him in the car. I did not need to see it. The image of the wax seal was the only memory I needed to keep. Grant was waiting for me near the elevators. He was holding a clipboard. I just signed the affidavit for the forensic audit, Grant said quietly. I turned over the clone of Marissa's hard drive to the district attorney. She can't hide the money. She can't blame you. It is over. Eliner, did she try to call you? I asked. 12 times. Grant said. I blocked the number. I am not her fiancée anymore. I am just the witness. He looked at me. What about you? What happens now? My phone buzzed. It was an email from Jonathan Crest. Subject: New opportunity. Eliner, in light of the recent events and your exceptional handling of the crisis, the board would like to offer you the lead role in our new expansion office in Chicago. It would be a fresh start, a clean slate. Let us know. I showed the email to Grant. Chicago, he said. Good pizza, cold winters. A clean slate, I repeated. I looked around the lobby of Northline Strategies. This building held the ghost of my marriage. It held the memory of Marcus Thorne's betrayal. It held the echoes of Ethan's screams. I think I will take it, I said. You should, Grant said. He extended his hand. Thank you, Eliner, for finding me, for not letting me be the fool. Thank you, Grant, I said, shaking his hand. For doing the math, he turned and walked toward the exit, stepping out into the city to rebuild his life. I stood alone in the center of the lobby. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened my messages. I scrolled down to the draft folder. There was a message there saved from 3 days ago before I knew everything, before I saw the envelope. It was a reply to one of Ethan's old texts. Love you too. Can't wait to see you. I stared at the words. They belonged to a different woman. They belonged to a wife who trusted, a wife who believed that stuck at moms meant stuck at moms. That woman was dead. She had died at table 14 in the Hawthorne room. I pressed edit. I selected the message. I pressed delete. The screen went blank. I locked the phone and slipped it into my pocket. I did not look back at the elevators. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the noise of the city. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. But for the first time in a long time, the path ahead of me was perfectly clear. I walked into the crowd, not as a victim, not as a wife, but as the woman who had survived the truth, and silence was the only sound I needed. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So, please leave a comment down below with your location and share your thoughts on Eliner's revenge. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.